October 5, 1976. A young lady named Jane at home with her 3 years old son in Citrus house. It was early in the morning when a so called police officer entered her house. He suddenly approached her bedroom, armed with a knife and a flashlight. Jane awoke to the blinding light and terrifying sight of the masked intruder. He tied Jane up, using shoelaces to bind her wrists and ankles. Her son was placed next to her, terrified but unharmed. Police officer named DeAngelo then blindfolded her and subjected her to a brutal sexual assault. Throughout the ordeal, he whispered threats into her ear, warning her not to scream or resist. The attack was calculated and cruel, leaving Jane traumatized but alive. Joseph James DeAngelo, once a respected police officer, led a double life that shocked the nation. Born on November 8, 1945, DeAngelo's early life seemed unremarkable. He served in the Navy during the Vietnam War and later pursued a career in law enforcement, serving as a police officer in various Californian towns. Little did anyone know, behind his badge and uniform lurked a sadistic serial killer. D'Angelo's early life was marred by trauma and violence. Born in Bath, New York, his family life was far from idyllic. Reports suggest that D'Angelo witnessed the rape of his sister by two airmen when he was just a child. This harrowing event, combined with a dysfunctional family environment, seemed to plant the seeds of his later criminal behavior. After serving in Navy, D'Angelo married Sharon Huddle, with whom he had three daughters. On the surface, he appeared to be a devoted family man. However, his career as a police officer in Exeter and Auburn provided him with the skills and knowledge to carry out his heinous crimes while evading detection. His law enforcement background gave him a unique understanding of criminal investigation techniques, which he used to meticulously plan his attacks. In the mid 1970s, D'Angelo began his crime spree in the Sacramento area, where he was initially known as the East Area Rapist. His modus operandi was terrifyingly consistent. He would stalk his victims, often suburban women, and meticulously plan his attacks. Under the cover of darkness, he would break into their homes, bind them, and subject them to a brutal sexual assaults. His ability to evade capture was uncanny, and he taunted the police and his victims with the threatening phone calls and letters. D'Angelo's crimes escalated in violence over time. On August 19, 1980, he broke into the home of Keith and Patrice Harrington in Dana Point. The young couple had recently married and were settling into their new life together. D'Angelo entered their home through a sliding glass door, his preferred method of entry. He tied them up, binding their hands and feet before brutally bludgeoning them to death with a blunt object. Their bodies were discovered by Keith's brother, Bruce Harrington, who was devastated by the loss. The Harrington murders were a part of series of attacks that would come to be known as the work of original Night Stalker and other aliases for D'Angelo. The brutality of the attacks shocked the community and left police scrambling for answers. The date was December 30, 1979. The air was crisp and quiet stillness had settled over the town of Goleta, California. It was a peaceful evening, one that Robert Offerman and Deborah Manning intended to spend quietly at Robert's condominium. Robert, a successful 44 years old osteopathic surgeon, and Deborah, a 35 years old psychologist, were enjoying a quiet evening together. They had no reason to suspect that their lives were about to intersect with one of the most prolific and terrifying serial killers in the American history. The Golden State Killer, also known as Joseph DeAngelo, was lurking in the shadows, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Under the cover of darkness, DeAngelo silently approached the condominium. He carefully pried open a window, his heart pounding with anticipation. Once inside, he moved with calculated precision, making his way towards the sleeping couple. D'Angelo was a master of his craft. He knew how to subdue his victims quickly and efficiently. Robert and Deborah awoke to a nightmare. D'Angelo, armed and masked, stood over them, his eyes cold and devoid of mercy. He brandished a gun, ordering them to remain silent. The couple, paralyzed with fear, compiled as he bound their hands and feet with twine, his preferred method of restraint. But Robert, sensing the imminent danger, found a surge of courage. He managed to break free from his restraints and attempted to confront their assailant. In a fit of rage, D'Angelo fired his gun multiple times, the deafening shots shattering the silence of the night. Robert fell to the floor, his life extinguished in an instant. Deborah, still bound and helpless, watched in horror as D'Angelo turned his attention to her. The cold barrel of the gun was pressed against her skin, and in that moment she knew there was no escape. D'Angelo pulled the trigger, silencing her forever. Despite the mounting evidence and countless man hours dedicated to catching him, D'Angelo remained elusive for decades. The turning point came in 2018 when innovative genetic genealogy techniques finally unmasked him. Investigators used DNA from crime scenes to build a family tree, leading them to D'Angelo. After years of hiding in plain sight, the former police officer was arrested on April 24, 2018, at his home in Citrus Heights. The arrest was a moment of vindication for his many victims and their families. D'Angelo, now an elderly man, was brought to justice for the crimes he committed decades earlier. The evidence against him was overwhelming: DNA, eyewitness accounts, and his own chilling admissions. In August 2020, Joseph James DeAngelo was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The sentence marked the end of a long and painful journey for the survivors and their families who had waited decades for the justice. Thanks for watching. If you find this video informative, please give it a big thumbs up, share with others who might be interested, and let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to the Silent Screams for more true crime stories.